Okay, Dr. Keith here again with the Christmas Smash. Let me ask you a question. What would you most like Santa Claus to bring you? Or in ordinary terms, what would you most like as a gift for Christmas? I'll tell you what I'd like. I'd like a couple of million extra brain cells. And that's what this rig here is all about. It's called the Violite Neuro, and it will help us grow some new brain cells. Now let's back up a little bit, which 10 years ago, I think it was certainly 12 years ago, everybody knew you couldn't grow any more brain cells. They died one by one, and as you got less and less cells, you got older and senile, and that was it. There was no chance of replacing brain cells, they said. And of course, the myth was that was the origin of dementia. You know, you lose so many brain cells that eventually you end up with a dementia. There's only one thing wrong with that story, is that people in their 90s and even past 100 were quite sharp mentally, and then people in their 60s and 70s went into a severe dementia decline. So that obviously wasn't quite true, really. Just losing your brain cells as you age wasn't the real secret to dementia. Well, we know a lot more about it now, of course. But you know, it was only just over a decade that this whole stupid myth that goes back decades, if not centuries, that you can't grow new brain cells was finally demolished. The whole myth was deconstructed. At La Jolla University, somebody actually caught brain cells in the act of dividing. Oh wow, that's more science that isn't science. You know, medicine and science itself, physics, they're full of science that isn't science. These are things that everybody knows is true and nobody ever questions, or if you do, you're a fool. You know, like telepathy and out-of-body experiences. Well, those can't happen. We're just a brain, so they must all be hallucinations. That kind of science, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, here's the story, and somebody, as I said, caught brain cells dividing. Wow, well, if only we could speed up the rate of division of brain cells, or stimulate the division, you know, without necessarily using stem cells. I mean, stem cells carry a lot of promise, but it's still early days. We've got past the stage of chopping up Russian embryos for stem cells, and we now realize we can harvest a person's own stem cells. And there's some promise, certainly with things like Parkinsonism. But, you know, just for general cognitive powers, and certainly for the worries of dementia, more cells the better. Let's just grow back our brains. And science has shown us that if you subject brain tissue to 110 nanometers of infrared light, that cells will divide and multiply. Not only that, but they'll sort of network with each other and join up. Listen, here's a bit of video footage I've shared with you before. It's caught brain cells in the act of dividing and moving towards each other and networking. This is what brains do best. The brain cells, or the neurons, they network and interconnect with each other. It's pretty amazing. This is speeded up time-lapse, but you'll see what's happening is that you can see there at least one of the highlighted cells is migrating across the field, joining up with others. But look, after 36 hours, there's a whole brain network in place that wasn't there before. Just watch this. I mean, to me, that's almost kind of, spiritual magic. It's God present inside your skull. What's that got to do with this device? Well, this is irradiating my skull with 810 nanometers. Even as I'm talking to you, I'm growing some new brain cells, as you just saw. Interestingly, it penetrates the skull. You don't have to worry about that. 810 nanometers is basically infrared, so my head is already beginning to feel a little bit warm. It's quite safe though. We're not frying you with gamma radiation or anything like that. It's only the longer end of visible light spectrum. And it has this amazing powers, and people are genuinely recovering. They're coming out of Alzheimer's and dementia. They're able to talk again. They can interconnect with their family and loved ones, and they actually recognize them and can talk with them. Where we've got this so far is that sometimes when you stop doing it on a regular basis, now you don't do this every day. I don't want you to run away with the idea that some is good, therefore more is better. You can overstimulate the system, and as I've written many times, that's not the way nature works. A tiny amount can be stimulating, but a large amount can be poisonous or toxic. A couple of times a week would be about right for this, or at the most every other day. And while a person is taking this treatment, which is easy enough, as you can see, I can talk, I can watch TV, I could even work at my computer while I'm experiencing this. If you do that, people, as I say, re-engage and reconnect. But if you stop doing it, there is some lapse. This is as far as we've got it. But listen, this is amazing news, and we've got scores and scores of people buying these devices because they're so valuable. If you're heading into trouble, or your spouse or loved one or your granddad, grandma is heading into trouble, get them one of these. They're not absolutely cheap, but I mean they're less than a couple of $1,000, including the shipping. And for what it can do, I mean, compare it anyway with something like junk, drugs like Aricept and things that don't do any good, they don't work, waste of time, just marketed on BS baloney science and then lots of hype and false advertising. But this, once you've got one, you can keep it, and what's more, it'll go from generation to generation. So when you grow up, and you bought one for granddad, and when you grow up and you start going a little bit dotty, we all go a little bit dotty, well, or at least memory starts to fail, but then there's the device for you as well. So it's a kind of family investment, if you like, a generational investment. It's all regulated from a box here. Electronic box does all the work for you. You charge it up, you switch it on, and it runs for about 25 minutes or so, and then will turn itself off, at which point you remove the equipment, get about your normal day's business. Now, you might ask, what is this weird thing shoved up my nose? Well, it's another light source. There's nothing to see. This is not one of the red ones, the 630 nanometers. This is invisible infrared light, and you put it up your nose because the blood circulation in the back of the nose is very rich, and it's also very close to the brain. So it's a way of, if you like, illuminating the brain with 810 nanometers from above and from below. Anyway, it's a device that's got lots of good features. It really, really does help people. I'd like you to have one of these, and as I've said, this series of videos is all about Christmas spirit. So get one of these now, and over the next few days during the Christmas season, we'll knock $150 off that. That can't be a bad deal, especially for what it can do for you. Okay, so click the link below this video and get in there and get yourself one if it has any meaning to you, to prevent aging, not have your brain gradually deteriorate, to try and regrow some healthy new brain cells. And remember, we're just talking about cells that divide. So you can start with 2 brain cells and end up with thousands just by the process of repeated division. It's called the Violite Neuro. You want the alpha preferably. If there are heavy memory issues, then we recommend possibly the gamma. All that's explained on the next page. When you click the link, it'll tell you which you need and how to get it. Thank you very much, and have a great Christmas, and have a lot more brain cells by the time New Year arrives. Take care.